Oh boy.
When I wake up each day, I feel so weary. Try to face the world, but it's so dreary. But I found that special thing that makes me cheery. Time to do music theory. Music theory.
You're watching Adventures in Music Theory with your host, Dr. Robbins. So for this unit, I thought we'd look at some of the 6/4 chords that happen at the end of Unit 11. And I really wanted to be able to put recordings of these pieces on the presentation for you, but I'm having trouble getting the video to allow me to speak and for me to put recordings on. So I've got the piano here. It'll be just like being in school. This piano is out of tune too, by the way. But this is the little passage for Heat Wave, which is an old Motown song that's on there. And you can hear how that's basically just a D chord and a G chord, but the D never leaves the bass, so all those G chords become pedal 6/4 chords because that D is like a pedal tone. And of course the D and the G, if you look at how those things are moving, well, we'll talk about that in a moment. As I mentioned, when you call it a pedal 6/4 chord, you're noticing the fact that the bass is basically the same pitch all the way through, even if it's jumping around an octave, like happens here. But it's a pedal tone. It's not changing off of that note, even as the chords change above it. If you call it a neighbor 6/4 chord, then you're talking about what's happening in the highest voices in the treble clef. Notice how there's that F sharp and A that steps up to the G and the B and the G chord, and then steps back down to the F sharp and A and the D chord, and it just keeps moving like upper neighbor notes. So those are the inner workings of a pedal 6/4 chord. Enjoy. And maybe I'll be able to find a recording. I'll try to put one on the next slide. This Haydn has a cadential 6/4 chord, and I will very slowly demonstrate it. Wish me luck. Hear that ending, this 1/6/4? And it's that C in the bass on the 1/6/4 that really creates the push to the 5 chord, and then of course our 1. And the whole thing gold star in piano for me today. Of course, part of what makes this cadential 6/4 chord a cadential 6/4 chord is that it comes before the 5 chord in a cadence. So you're going to find cadential 6/4 chords in cadences that have 5 chords, like half cadences and authentic cadences and deceptive cadences. The other thing is cadential 6/4 chords are metrically stronger than the 5 chord. So this cadential 6/4 chord comes on beat 2, which isn't that strong, but neither is beat 3. So because of that, the cadential 6/4 chord seems to have more weight than the 5 chord. Cadential 6/4 chords can't be in a weaker place than the 5 chord that comes after them. And the other important element of a cadential 6/4 chord is that resolution tendency of the voices that are a sixth and a fourth above the bass note to move down by step to the fifth and the third of the 5 chord. And you can see that marked with the little blue arrows in the box there. I told you all we wouldn't find many of these in classical music, but I feel like we should look at some anyway. These are arpeggiated 6/4 chords. And they happen because the Roman numeral's not changing, but the bass is alternating between playing the root of the chord and the fifth of the chord. You can see that, of course, in the first two measures at the beginning of this page. You can also see it many places. You can see it at the end of the second system with the B flat chords. And back to F. So these things are very common. As I've said before, the big thing about arpeggiated 6/4 chords is the Roman numeral doesn't change. It goes from being 1 to 1/6/4 or 1/6 to 1/6/4 or whatever. And you can see that happening here. It's always going back and forth between root position and second inversion. Notice also with the figured bass, whenever a chord goes to second inversion, of course we put 6/4. Whenever that chord winds back up in root position, notice that there are figured bass numbers underneath the bass note that say 5/3 to let us know that chord would be in root position with a third and a fifth above the bass note. Of course, it's not like the people who are on the recording I'm about to play of this for y'all would actually be reading figured bass.
I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the ends out for the tie that binds. Because you're mine, I walk the line.
Okay, here's a cadential 6/4 chord courtesy of Mozart. And the cadential 6/4 chord happens at the ending there. I'm going to play those last two measures again, and I'll emphasize the bass in the cadential 6/4 chord so you can hear that. Hear that? Dissonant fourth above the bass in the cadential 6/4, down by steps to the 5 chord. You can sort of tell that the next chord we hear is going to be that, and we're going to go through all that again and stuff. But listen to it one more time. And that's how the Mozart works. Okay, and here's the Beethoven String Quartet example, which we're not going to bother listening to. But it's an example of a passing 6/4 chord, which happens near the end of the passage there. And as I've mentioned a few times, and as the book makes known, The main thing about a passing 6/4 that makes it recognizable is the stepwise motion in the bass. You get to the 6/4 chord by step, and you leave the bass note of the 6/4 chord by step going in the same direction. You can either go up by steps like Beethoven does, here going F, G, A, or you can move down by steps going A, G, F. But it's that stepwise approach to and through the bass that's important for a passing 6/4 chord. The other thing, of course, is that a lot of times in these passing 6/4 progressions, there's that voice who's doing the opposite of what the bass does, the so-called voice exchange. So in our passing 6/4 progression, while the bass goes F, G, A, if you look above the cello doing that, into the first violin part, you'll see that the first violin's going A, G, F at the same time. And that creates that passing 6/4 progression. So that gets us to the end of this lesson. For next time, let's look at some homework. I want you to look at Unit 11, Assignment 4. It's not something I'm going to take up and grade, but it is going to be the focus of our next video. So make sure you've gone over it in advance. Also remember that there is a test on Monday, April the 6th. And I'll be putting that up online, and that's something that you all can scan and send back to me, or take pictures of and send back, or whatever. But make sure you've looked over that homework so that when we get together on Friday, you have a sense of what's going on, because it's going to be focused on the homework. Also, if you have questions, send them to me and I will answer them. Until then, stay happy and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.